this episode, I want to talk to you about farming and when you want to farm and like how much you want to farm and different points in the game when you don't want to farm. I think that a lot of people get this a little bit wrong when they play offlane. They either farm too much and farm too defensively, or they farm not enough and they try and run around and fight too much or like kill people too much. So there's like a fine balance there. And usually in the early game, you want to make sure that you farm, that you get a good game. I would say like if you're playing like a blink hero like Axe, you want to really make sure that you get your blink at a good timing. You want to make sure that you can make moves and create space for your team. And like you want to make sure that you can maybe snowball the game a little bit. If you're playing a hero like Tidehunter, for example, it's not so important that you get like the best early game. Maybe you will like recover anyway. Maybe like, especially on heroes like Darkseer that has a really easy time farming without putting themselves at risk. It's more important maybe that you don't farm all the time in the early game, or that you let like your team take the safer farm and you take the more aggressive farm. On a timing hero, I think it's fine that you take like more defensive farm like this and you let your team maybe be pressured and like have to leave their lanes, as long as you get your timing at a good pace. To understand as well why it's important that like you get a good timing and that you farm a lot during these periods of the game is, I don't really have any playmakers on my team. There's nobody that later into the game is gonna make space for me. There's nobody that's gonna like let me farm later into the game. So if I don't get any farm during the early parts of the game, I'm probably never gonna get any good farm. Like, of course, eventually I'll get a blink, but it will be like situations like this when the enemy is running at me. If I was 2,000 gold away from blink instead of like 1,000 gold away from blink, it's like much harder for me to get that item at an early timing. As well as these heroes like Spectre and Lone or whatever heroes you have, Orc Warriors and Anti-Mages, because they're only farming as well. If you're also only farming later part of the game, that means that it's a lot easier for them to get ganked because you're not being able to pressure. So even if like you're still getting gold and even if you're still happy, probably your carry or your mid hero is going to be very sad when they have nobody to play around, or they're getting ganked because you're not putting any pressure on the enemy team instead. Scenarios that usually occur, I would say like in the mid game, is people tend to group up and farm a little bit less split. Obviously in the laning phase, you know, everybody's farming. There's one hero top, one hero mid, one hero bottom, you know, everybody's farming. Later into the game, people play a little bit more split, and it's important to understand when you want to farm and when you don't want to farm. I would say in general, if you have more map control than the enemy, it's okay to farm, because that means that you're farming more, and that means that the game is moving like in a direction that's winning for your team. And if the enemy team has more map control and they're farming more than you, it's like moving in the enemy's team favor. And in scenarios when you have less map control, you usually need to fight or bait or find some way to break it up in order to like equalize. In situations where they have more map control, let's say all of their heroes are in the triangle, it's like okay for me to farm pretty much wherever on the map, as long as everybody on my team feels safe and we know like we're not going to get ganked. I want to show you an example of this when right here I'm like farming the jungle, because I know that there have been 5 people in the triangle, so I don't feel like I'm really stressed to like push out this lane or to, you know, make space or gank or somebody, because they're playing so together. You can even see right now they're like trying to gank, and I'm just kind of holding this area, making sure that like, oh, maybe if they're coming from here, I'll be ready in fight. So I'm like farming these camps, I'm holding our map control, I'm like pretty happy. I already have my items, which means that the role to not farm is a little bit more on me, and like Spectre is always going to be farming. This is the guy we really want farm on. But in other scenarios moving forward, when the enemy team split up more and they start farming more, as I can see right now, I see, oh, the Wyvern has nuked out top. I see this Mirana, or we don't see this Mirana, but we know that this guy has nuked out bottom on Gyrocopter. That means that their team is split, right? The Wyvern is top, Gyrocopter bottom. That means it's probably a good time for me not to farm and to take more map control, because when the enemy team is farming a lot, like I said, you want to make sure that like you kind of start hunting them, or that you don't farm. So then we smoke into the triangle. Unfortunately, we only kill this guy, but the map control that we get compared to before is like they're all playing really far back, which means that I can now safely farm all these camps, push out this wave. I don't need to like stress too much, because at the same time my carry has all this space, so he can also farm and he's not getting pressured. In scenarios where I would say that only 1 person or 2 people can farm in your team, it's like very common that the game is people are fighting and running at each other or running together a lot. It's more important that your carry gets the farm and that you leave him the farm, especially like in the late game when you already have your items and you already have your timings. In this game, like I'm queuing up a BKB, and of course that item would be really nice for me when they have like a lot of magic damage and control. But at the same time, it's a lot more important that this guy finish like his Manta and then he finishes his like Skadi. Those like 4,000 and 5,000 gold on him is gonna have way more impact than if I would like have that money myself. Like I would probably buy like an AC, maybe an Aghanims, maybe a Heart. And while those items are good for me, it's not like what's gonna win us the game. So it's also important to understand when you reach your timing and when you should kind of pass the torch like to your other heroes. When you play offlane and you've already hit your timing, but the enemy team is maybe playing grouped or very defensive, that means that you still want to farm, but you want to be taking the aggressive farm. And to understand what farm is like risky on the map, or what farm there might gank people if they go, you kind of need to understand where their heroes are and what objectives people are playing around. Right now, Rosh is alive, which is like a really big objective, but because they've just died and they've kind of like, they're not 5 alive, the Mirana just respawned, I don't think they're like heading into Rosh straight away, which means that what they're probably gonna do is they're gonna like run bottom, farm this out, and then they will run over to Rosh. So right now, this past like 30 seconds, this area is what's kind of dangerous and a little bit scary, and this area is what's like a little bit safe. But what's gonna happen is they're gonna wanna take control of Roshan, so I know that after I kill this wave, I'm gonna wanna move over to the top side if I wanna fight and if I wanna protect my team, or if I wanna finish my item and I don't wanna like fight, I wanna not play risky, I guess. I'm gonna finish my BKB down here because they're moving to Roshan, so like I don't wanna fight right now. I wanna finish my BKB, hit my small item timing, and then I wanna move over. You can tell my team like recognizes that they're gonna come, so we start running away as they smoke in. And I tell my team like to wait because I'm farming, I don't wanna fight. I tell like very clearly, I'm farming, get back. As an offlaner, you're kinda expected to always be there, to show up for fights, to initiate. So in scenarios when like this, when you're close to your BKB and you really don't want to fight, you have to make it extremely clear. People usually don't like expect their carry to always show up. They don't expect him to like be the first one in, but they do expect you to be there. So if you can't be there, like it's usually not something that people think about that much. You can see though the difference is now that I farmed, I finished my BKB. Then I'm like, okay, now I'm done with farming. I want to stop them from roshing. I want to fight them. This is like a very down to the line timing, I would say. The Rosh is about to die, it's very low HP, but I know like reasonably I'm gonna be able to get this item and be there in time. Sometimes if they had been in this area a lot earlier and maybe they have heroes with more damage, maybe the Gyro is more farmed, like he has a Daedalus, then there's no way in hell I'm gonna be able to finish my BKB. I would have to stop farming, come over right away, and instead play around like saving gold for buyback or something like that. Afterwards, I think we wipe them here and we take Rosh. Right now, it's important to understand that we're stronger than the enemy. We have Aegis. Their Disruptor is dead. Like, we want to take map control. That means that you don't really want to be the one farming. When your team is playing aggressive, and especially when you're pushing for objectives, it's important that you stay 5 and that you run with your team. And if you split off and farm, like, that means our initiator will be, I don't know, farming enchants, doing something else, like picking up bounties. All these heroes would be a lot weaker on the map, and like we wouldn't be able to punish them if they were to make a move on us. Sometimes, if you don't want to like go for objectives and you want a team fight, it's fine to break off and farm, but then it's important that like your team is not running out mid to push, and you need to like really look on the minimap to make sure that you're like not the only one farming. You can see right now that even though we're farming, I'm taking like kind of the aggressive space. I'm like playing mid where they could come, and my 2 cores who wants to farm more than me and safer than me are playing far back. Right now, we're waiting for our Haunt cooldown, so it's important as well when you farm or fight that you play around your cooldowns and understand like, while our cooldowns are down, maybe we're waiting 1 minute and maybe I'm not really farming anything, I'm just literally running back and forth here, like scouting a little bit, making sure we're not like taking a bad fight, and then as soon as the Haunt is ready, I'm like, okay guys, I'm gonna start farming more aggressively, or I'm gonna start looking for moves. Especially in the mid-late game, it's not important that you farm all the time. You already have your items, so you need like, even if nobody on your team is farming, sometimes it can be okay to just wait for a big cooldown, wait for Rosh to spawn or something like that, as long as you're like holding the map and doing the right thing. Gold later into the game means less and less. That's why sometimes you have these big like 50k, 60k gold leads, and one team like seem unable to end the game. I know it's very common for our team, but it's just simply due to the fact that like, even if you're up 50k, but if your heroes are all maxed out, or maybe that's just 1 or 2 items more than the enemy, it's not like you have double their items. you have like 20% more items than them. Sometimes that's like not enough. So basically that just means that later into the game, gold gets less important, and it's more important like where you take team fights, your map control, and objectives. The only thing I would add is if you're farming, or like if you know you want to fight, but you also really want to farm, is to make sure that you farm together with your team. You can tell your team like, I'm like farming the gold off my BKB. If you don't feel any area that is safe, maybe you can tell your carry, I need to farm ancients, or I need to farm the heart camp. A lot of the time, if we're about to finish an item, you can even just sit 5 people here and farm out these 3 camps like a couple of minutes on this one person that wants to farm, and then the rest of the people just like maybe hold the area or like basically just wait for him to finish his item. In this game, I want to show an example of when I farm my blink at a very early timing, but then I run around and try and kill heroes way too much and I don't farm enough. I think it's a very common mistake people do, that they feel like, oh, like I have my blink, maybe they have like in this case a Skywrath on their team, and it's extremely easy for us to kill people that are alone. You know, everybody that's gonna get stunned is gonna get one-shotted by us pretty much. It is like 1,000 damage. You know, it's so early into the game when I get my blink that like I guess I'm a little bit too like hot for kills. It's so easy, it feels like, which ends up with me running into more than one guy and dying a lot of times. The reason I go blink in this game is because I have so strong follow-up, so I go it very early. Sometimes you want to like farm a little bit more, but I know like in this game, if I buy this blink, I can make a lot of space. So I just make sure that I farm my blink and then I start making plays. However, when I do get my blink, I end up making bad plays and making too many plays. And you need to like understand the difference of trying to look for a gank when it's good and trying to look for a gank when it's bad. And when a gank is good is when a guy is alone or he's not prepared, or like it's working out, right? When a gank is not good is when they're baiting him, or there's a guy behind him, or you have very little follow-up, or you just blink in and die. Right now I finished my blink at a pretty early timing, 12 minutes, not something that like everybody expects. And a very common thing to do is to smoke up right away when you have the blink. I saw this invoker running over this ward, so I know that he's in this area. So I'm like, Skywrath, come and smoke on him. Problem is that we've just lost a fight bottom, so half our team is dead, and this wave is pushed in very close to our tower, and this Oracle is sitting mid, nuking out, so the invoker feels very scared. You can even see we scan for him, and we don't find him, so I know that he's running away, and I try and catch him. And I would say at this point, right now, a lot better to just go back and farm. They're playing safe together, like half my team is dead, we're not really going to put too much pressure. It's kind of obvious for this invoker that this is happening, so he's running away towards his team, and I decide to keep chasing. I think probably I was like very tired at this point. Looking at it, this seems pretty bad, but you know, I'm just going to show what it looks like. This Oracle is ready behind him. He has his ultimate, which is going to make it impossible to kill Invoker. I just blink in and stun this guy anyway. This Skywrath is not really in range because he feels like I don't really want to go, so I'm kind of forcing him to do this as well. We end up like being disconnected, we don't even kill the guy. Even if we would have killed him, it would most likely have ended up with me and Skywrath dying anyway. And all this space and this wave has been pushed in for so long, it's just completely unused. And a lot better way to set this up would have been, I don't show anywhere, I still like put pressure on the enemy by being in fog and they have to play defensive, but I probably just farm out all these camps. I put Skywrath on the lane for a little bit, and like 30 seconds or 1 minute after that, then we can go for a smoke gank to somebody we know or alone, or then maybe I'll hide in the trees and wait for somebody to come defend this tower or push out this lane. I'm gonna do this again, I'm sure, if I remember correctly, that I run out bottom and I go to an area where I think they're playing in, because I'm like, I know they're gonna have heroes here, but I'm not showing on the lane, so I'm not really farming. But due to the fact that once again, this lane is very pushed in, they have a ward, they see that nobody's here, they know like, the Faceless Void is probably farming, but they know that I'm not farming, because the way the map's set up is just like, it's not working. There's not enough space for us to be on the map if we were to be farming, so for sure they know I'm doing something. And you can see like the way the enemy team is set up, that every hero on their team is ready for this play. Like literally every hero is ready. The Oracle is like perfectly positioned. Even though he doesn't have ultimate, he's just gonna save him by making him magic immune. So there's like no way this is gonna work out. I think the Invis Riki even scouts me, which is like another thing to think about, running into Invis heroes or running into wards. something you have to be really careful about. And if you think there's like a high chance of happening, it's better that you just keep on farming instead of trying to make plays when you're going to be on their vision. It's never going to work out. I just basically run in and die. They chase more. I don't know if they kill people, but it just ends up being like a really bad scenario for us. Like you can see, I've got my blink at 12 minutes. I've gained 0 gold. I think I've even gained 0 levels. My game has like only progressed backwards, and instead of us being up 2k, we're now like down in gold. And still, nobody has farmed here at all. Like we haven't really put any pressure. Basically, by playing like this, you're rewarding the enemy for playing defensive and for playing S5, whereas normally people that play this much together and people that play this safe is usually like normally going to get super outfarmed because they're not really killing any creep camps, they're not really making any moves, you know, they're just waiting for me to run into them. So I think this is a very common mistake and something that happens when maybe you're a little bit unfocused or maybe you're a little bit tilted. It's better to just take a step back and to understand, like, if I farm for 1 minute or 2, it's not going to be the end of the world. Maybe there's some play that I'm missing, or maybe there's like this perfect gank that we didn't pull off. But usually staying back and farming is like a safer thing if you don't know what you're doing is going to work out. In this game, I'm going to show you a match we played against Alliance, where I'm playing Axe and I'm kind of snowballing. I have a really big net worth lead. You can see that like my laning phase went really well. I'm one of the top farmed heroes in the game. I already have my blink, I have my regen item. Like I kind of like have my timing, which means that I'm looking for fights and I'm looking for plays. The point of like trying to kill people and the point of like looking for plays and taking map control is that you can get more farm than the enemy. At a certain point, when the enemy is just running away from you, you see the Gyruss is running away, the rest of their team is just like up here, we can like do whatever we want with this space. It's usually better that you understand like, okay, like 70% of the map we can just farm out, instead of like keep running for kills, instead of maybe running up this hill just to keep chasing their team. I'll just stay in the like the aggressive space and farm. And then once I feel like I'm gonna get ganked, either I get out of there or I tell my team to come connect and fight with me. Like, if you're playing offlane and you're not doing any moves, it's usually gonna end up with there's no farm on the map because you're carrying your mid, it's just like killing all the camps, and maybe you kill a creep over here or there, maybe you're getting ganked, you feel like, oh, like I don't know what, I can't farm anywhere, this is really sad. So by making moves, you push the enemy like away from their side of the map, away from their camps. And once you've done that, the whole point of it is, okay, now I'm gonna farm here. Like now I'm taking this space, which is contested, but for now I feel like it's like safe. So I kill their camps. The Gyruss bottom ulted. Because we have a ward and a sentry here, I feel relatively safe to be here. Of course, it's still like a risky place. You can see their entire team is like approaching me. As soon as I see any hero, I just like blink away and TP home. Another thing to think about as well, if you can steal farm from the enemy heroes, it's really good to kill their camps before or just after they respawn. That's why I was really greedy for this as well, because just after the minute, if I kill this camp, let's say I kill this camp, let's say I kill this camp, the Gyrocopter walks into this jungle and all the camps are dead and he has nothing to farm, so he's like really sad. Another trick you can do is that you leave like this, you leave one small creep, so if they never go and kill it, that camp is going to be blocked like for a very long time, and it's gold that over time they're going to keep losing minute after minute. Once this map setup is like back, where my Spectre is farming and my Lone is kind of farming, and there's no really place for me to be made, even though in this scenario it's better that I am bottom and that Lone Wood is here farming like safe and in the triangle, because I just went back to base and because he's already bottom, like instead of spending a lot of time shifting and making sure that you have like the perfect map positioning, sometimes it's better to just farm like camps on the way and slowly transition to where you want to be in order to like keep getting gold. You can see this guy has to play safe, so he's like wasting a little bit of time, but it would have been a bigger time waste for us both if he had to like run back all the way and I had to run out bottom, and then I just had to play safe anyway. The camps that I killed just now, it's not like I stole them, you know, they're spawning again. It's just like extra gold that I'm getting like by running out on the map. As another thing to think about as well is though, even though we're ahead, and even that you can see this nice juicy ancient stack, always remember to keep stacking as well, even later into the game. Really good way for your supports to get money. Even though we're ahead and we have a big lead, I know that we have a late game lineup, so I know like if we're farming 50% and we're like, it goes to 45 minutes and we're still just up 5,000 gold, or even if it's even, that's like a win for us. In those scenarios, you want to focus on farming a lot more, and you don't really need to take that much map control, and you don't really need to put that much pressure. You can see that like the way I'm playing, I kill this ancient stack. I'm like chilling here. I'm like waiting to see if this is safe or not. The information I have is very limited. I don't really know what their team is doing. I only see this Venge. In my opinion, they're all in here. Oh, we even we draw on the minimap, like this is where all their heroes are. But the fact that I see Venge and Mirana show mid, and I have this lane ward, I feel like I don't really think I'm dying if I'm gonna go here. It's important to understand that the enemy team is always also farming, or maybe they're running together, but they're like their carry especially is always gonna wanna farm. So even if they were here, it's not like they're probably sitting in these trees thinking like, oh, somebody's going to go farm this lane. That's something an offlaner would do. What the carrier is going to do, he's going to be like, oh, I want to farm this camp, I want to farm this camp, I want to farm this camp. And then he sees me bottom, maybe then he will start running over. So you kind of need to like expect that people are not always going to be ready, and they're also going to be farming, especially the carry and the mid player. Supports and offlaner is a little bit riskier to play against on the map. They're probably going to play more aggressive, and they have more tools to kill you with. In situations like this, when one team is running together and the other team is split, also a good time to just keep farming. Even though like this mid tower is a strong objective, it's something we want to defend. I know that I can come in a little bit later. It's not something that's going to die instantly, and I can like farm a couple more waves, both me and Spectre. They're kind of just wasting time playing as 5, and we keep getting gold. It's like a good thing to think about, like if the enemy team is running 5 and you're playing split, as long as you're not giving them any objectives, like Roche or towers, you're always going to come out ahead.